I watched from my living room window as two police cruisers pulled up to our house, lights flashing in the afternoon sun, and let me tell you, nothing in this world prepares you for the sight of law enforcement rolling up on your front yard while your wife is just trying to bring in the groceries. There, on her porch, arms folded like she owned the place, was Patricia Thornfield, the so-called HOA president, wearing that satisfied little smirk, the one like she'd just won the neighborhood lottery. Patricia had finally done it. She'd called the cops on my wife. What she didn't know, though, was that in less than 3 minutes, those same officers would be saluting the woman she was trying to have removed from our own front porch. Yeah, that happened. Let me back up a sec, because you really gotta understand the flavor of this mess. My name's David Richardson, and up until about 3 months ago, I honestly thought life was about to get a whole lot simpler. My wife Sarah and I moved into Oakwood Heights, a picture-perfect neighborhood if you're just driving through tree-lined streets every lawn cut, just so the kind of place that hands out holiday cookie baskets to newcomers. It was supposed to be our fresh start. Sarah had just come back from her third deployment overseas, ready to breathe, to maybe put her boots up for once. Well, as civilian as you can get when your wife is a lieutenant colonel in the Air Force. First couple weeks were good, great even. Folks smiled, waved. We met our next-door neighbors who brought us pie. But we didn't realize that baked into all that neighborly charm, there was a little HOA dictatorship going on with Patricia Thornfield running the show. She wore her title like a badge and carried a measuring tape like it was a sword. I'll never forget our first real run-in. We're out front, boxes everywhere, Sarah directing the movers in her civvies, when Patricia comes strutting up with her clipboard. She introduces herself like she's the mayor, says she needs to inspect our moving permits. Moving permits for our own driveway. I laughed, thinking she was kidding, but she just stared at me, lips pursed, and wrote something down. Strike one. It really went off the rails the first morning Patricia saw Sarah in uniform, her dress blues squared away and sharp. Sarah was loading gear for a base ceremony, and Patricia just appeared, I swear, like a cartoon villain, squinting, asking what costume Sarah was wearing. Sarah, calm as ever, explained it was her Air Force uniform. Patricia snorted and said, "Well, I doubt that. No woman I know ever made it to that rank. You know what I mean?" From that day on, it was game on. She started treating Sarah like public enemy number one. The grass, 1/4 inch too long. Our flag, not at the right angle. Our car, supposedly parked 2 inches over the line. Every violation came with a letter, a threat, and a smug little visit from Patricia, clipboard in hand. Sarah handled it all, patient as a saint, fixing each supposed infraction within hours. But I saw it, this war on her. Here was a woman who'd led squadrons, made real sacrifices, getting harassed by someone whose claim to fame was a neighborhood newsletter. And Patricia didn't keep it private, oh no. She started bringing up Sarah's suspicious behavior at HOA meetings, hinting that Sarah was probably faking her service, maybe even impersonating an officer, which, she'd loudly remind everyone, is a federal crime. I was ready to go toe-to-toe with her right then and there, but Sarah held me back, said, "Let her dig her own grave." She was documenting everything, every notice, every visit, logging times and dates. Classic Sarah, treating this like a military op. I should have known she had a plan. Then came the Thursday that changed everything. Sarah had just come back from a strategy meeting at the base, unloading locked metal briefcases, actual classified stuff, when Patricia came stomping across the street, red-faced and shrieking loud enough for the whole block to hear. "I know you're up to something illegal," she yelled. "Those cases probably have stolen goods. And that uniform's obviously fake." Sarah didn't even flinch, just said, "Ma'am, I can't discuss the contents. Security clearance." That's when Patricia's eyes lit up like she'd just hit the jackpot. She whipped out her phone and dialed 911, practically shouting, "There's a dangerous intruder impersonating military personnel, carrying suspicious cases, refusing to cooperate, might be armed." I stood frozen at the door, and Sarah just shook her head, placed the briefcases on the porch, and sat down on the steps to wait. She looked back at me and whispered, "Let it play out." 10 minutes later, here come the cops. 2 cruisers, sirens off, but you could feel the tension from a mile away. Patricia runs out, all hand-waving and finger-pointing, laying it on thick. The officers take some notes, then start toward our porch. But the lead cop guy with a sergeant's stripes sees Sarah, and his whole demeanor changes. He stops in his tracks, whispers to his partner. Both of them stand a little straighter. The sergeant approaches Sarah and asks with actual respect in his voice, "Lieutenant Colonel Richardson." Sarah confirms, and he breaks into this big, genuine smile. Turns out the sergeant had been in one of Sarah's joint trainings a couple years back. And suddenly this whole circus takes a sharp left turn. The sergeant tells his partner loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear that Sarah is exactly who she says she is, and more, she actually helped develop interagency protocols the police still use. The younger cop's eyes just about pop out of his head. Then right there in front of Patricia, the neighbors. Everyone, both officers, come to attention and salute my wife. Sarah, cool as ever, returns the salute and offers her credentials for their report. The sergeant waves it off, says it's not needed, and asks if she wants to file a complaint for harassment and false reporting. Now, I wish I had a camera for Patricia's face. She went from smug to sick in about 2 seconds flat. She tried to weasel out, said she just misunderstood the situation, but the sergeant shut her down hard. He explained that making a false report, especially claiming someone might be armed, was a crime, and harassing military personnel could lead to federal charges. Sarah said she'd think about pressing charges, but for sure wanted a report filed. The sergeant took her statement, and as Patricia tried to slink away, he called her back, needed her info for the paperwork. The younger cop, meanwhile, was talking to Sarah about her service, mentioning his brother was in the Air Force and asking for advice. By now, the whole neighborhood was out watching, and for the first time, everyone was getting the real story. Before they left, the sergeant apologized to Sarah, thanked her for her service loud enough so everyone heard, and made it crystal clear that false reports against military folks were not something they'd tolerate. Patricia, still shaking, tried to defend herself one last time, but the sergeant just handed her a summons for false reporting and said she could expect a fine up to $5,000 plus civil liability if Sarah chose to sue. Then both officers saluted Sarah again before driving off. Sarah picked up her briefcases, nodded at Patricia, who looked like she might faint from the embarrassment, and headed inside, shoulders straight, not a single word wasted. The neighborhood was buzzing after that. Within 2 days, everybody in Oakwood Heights knew what really went down. The story grew a little with every telling, how Patricia tried to have a decorated officer hauled off in cuffs, how the police ended up saluting her on her own porch. The HOA board called an emergency meeting. I went with Sarah. The place was packed, board members, neighbors, even some folks I'd never seen before, all wanting to see the showdown. Right out the gate, several board members came over apologizing for Patricia, thanking Sarah for her service. Some said they had veterans in their families and were horrified by what had happened. When the meeting finally started, Patricia's actions were the first thing on the agenda. The board's attorney stood up and laid it all out. Patricia had exposed the HOA to real legal risk. Filing false police reports as HOA president. That could make the whole association liable. Patricia tried to claim she was just doing her job, but no one bought it. They'd reviewed every violation she'd given us. Compared to everyone else in the neighborhood, clear as day, this was targeted harassment. Someone pointed out her own hedge was 2 inches over the limit, and she never cited herself. The vote to remove Patricia was unanimous. Even she couldn't look anyone in the eye. They voided all the violations against us, issued a formal apology, and the board's lawyer recommended they pay our legal fees if we went after Patricia in court. But it didn't stop there. Word got out to Patricia's boss, a real estate firm, not the kind of place that likes being in the news for harassing veterans and filing bogus police reports. By the next week, Patricia was out of a job, and to top it off, the DA decided to press charges. Patricia pled no contest, and the judge, a veteran himself, wasn't in a forgiving mood. She got a $3,000 fine, 100 hours of community service at the local VA hospital, and a year's probation. When they read out the sentence, Patricia was white as a sheet, hands trembling on the defendant's table, all that bravado finally gone. Funny thing is, after all the drama, life in Oakwood Heights settled down real fast. Neighbors stopped to chat, brought over casseroles, even asked Sarah to help organize the Memorial Day barbecue. It was like the whole place remembered what real community looks like and what it doesn't. And as for Patricia, well, last I heard she'd moved out, though some folks say she still drives through now and then just to glare at our front lawn. So here's my question for anyone listening. Where's the line between protecting your neighborhood and crossing over into plain old spite? Does a title give someone the right to treat others like suspects, or is real authority earned through respect and service? Let me know what you think. Was justice served, Or does this just open another can of worms for HOAs everywhere? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear where you stand on this one.